In the summer of 2021, a single sentence leaked from behind the glass walls in Abu Dhabi. The United Arab Emirates was considering leaving OPEC. For an energy-dependent nation like India, this rumor hit with the weight of an earthquake. Because the country relies so heavily on imported fuel, a shift in Gulf policy translates into a direct risk for the economic stability of over 1 billion people. A disruption in the oil supply chain manifests in the price of every liter of petrol at this station, the cost of an LPG cylinder in a village kitchen, and the price of the fertilizer a farmer needs for his fields. To understand why the UAE, historically the quiet, reliable prince of the Middle East, would threaten the global energy market, we have to look back to a time when oil was a wild flood, entirely controlled by Western empires. In 1949, the Middle East was drowning in crude, but the wealth flowed strictly west. 7 massive corporations, the Seven Sisters, controlled every drop from facilities like this, keeping a barrel of oil cheaper than bottled water. In 1959, executives in London and New York cut the price of oil by 10%. They made the decision unilaterally, without consulting a single Arab leader. To the nations whose wealth lay beneath the sand, it was a public humiliation. A year later, a Venezuelan minister and a Saudi visionary met secretly in Baghdad with leaders from Iran, Iraq, and Kuwait. They proposed a simple idea. The producers, not the consumers, should dictate the price of their treasure. They formed OPEC as a defensive shield against the West. In 1973, that shield became a sword. When war broke out in the Sinai, the Arab members of OPEC responded to Western support for Israel by halting oil flows. The price of oil exploded from $3 to nearly $12. Panic swept the globe as industries stalled, and citizens from America to Japan faced a world where energy was suddenly violently scarce. This global crisis unequivocally proved that oil was a lethal political weapon. Global power moved from Western boardrooms to the desert capitals, where political decisions now dictated the price of global movement. In the year 1971, Sheikh Zayed united 7 fragmented emirates into the UAE. He immediately brought his new nation into OPEC, seeking diplomatic weight and protection from the regional giants surrounding him. The UAE became the reliable builder of the group. They used their oil revenue not for regional conflicts, but for domestic growth, turning a sleepy creek called Dubai into a global metropolis. By the 1980s, the Brotherhood was managed through this building in Vienna, where they developed a system to exert precise control over the global market. This is the quota system. Analysts calculate the world's total oil demand, and then draw a hard production ceiling across the top to prevent a surplus from crashing the price. That total volume is then sliced up among members based on their historical capacity. This trapped the UAE into an artificially small production slice, forcing them to leave massive reserves in the ground. For decades, Abu Dhabi accepted this restriction. The goal of the Brotherhood was to keep prices high and grow wealthy together, and the strategy worked. But as the 21st century progressed, a new anxiety emerged within the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. The rise of renewable energy and electric vehicles signaled an undeniable reality. The age of oil has a visible expiration date. This creates the risk of a stranded asset. If global demand disappears before the UAE can extract its oil, these billions of barrels become worthless. The OPEC quota system now acts as a clamp, preventing rapid extraction. The protective union is now an economic barrier. The strategy has shifted to a race. Abu Dhabi must liquidate its reserves, converting oil into cash while a global market still exists. The 2021 whisper was the first visible crack in the Brotherhood. The UAE is attempting to secure its future before the world's thirst for oil permanently dries up, even if it means firing the first shot in an impending energy war. In late 2016, inside a hotel room in Algiers, 2 bitter Cold War adversaries agreed to coordinate their production. Facing a collapse in prices, Saudi Arabia and Russia forged an alliance driven by a need for collective survival. They were reacting to a new rival on the edge of their territory. Technological wizardry had unlocked vast shale oil reserves in Texas and North Dakota, allowing nimble American companies to flood the market and crash prices in 2014. This was the birth of OPEC+, a cartel on steroids. By bringing the old guard together with Russia, they gained the power to artificially strangle the global oil supply, hoping to drive prices back up and neutralize the American threat. This grand alliance relied on shared survival rather than mutual trust. It was a marriage of convenience, held together by the fear of losing control over the global energy chessboard. That foundation was tested in 2020, when the world stopped breathing. As COVID-19 grounded flights and silenced factories, the global demand for oil vanished into thin air. This chart shows the result, a price collapse so severe it turned negative. For a few hours in April 2020, sellers were actually paying the buyer to take the oil away because there was nowhere left to store it. A panicked Saudi Arabia demanded immediate, punishing production cuts to stop the bleeding. They pressured every member of the cartel to keep their oil in the ground, even as national economies began to crumble. The pandemic acted as a brutal stress test. It didn't just break the global economy. It forced a choice between cartel discipline and national interest, cracking the loyalty within OPEC+. In the summer of 2021, the tension erupted. The United Arab Emirates, usually a loyal partner in the Gulf, suddenly began to push back. In tense video calls, their delegates blocked Saudi-Russian proposals, calling the current deal unfair. The grievance was a matter of mathematics. OPEC Plus limits output based on a baseline, a production quota often set years in advance. The UAE spent $122 billion expanding infrastructure, but were forced to cut from an outdated baseline. They were penalized, asked to keep new capacity idle while others pumped above quotas, stealing market share. The UAE realized their loyalty cost billions. To Abu Dhabi, the cartel's enforcers weren't protecting the market, they were suppressing Emirati growth. During the 2021 negotiations, the UAE leveraged a new threat, the nuclear option of leaving OPEC. It was a clear signal that they were no longer willing to let a committee in Vienna dictate their economic future. The Emirati leadership is looking at the accelerating global energy transition. They see a future where carbon regulations and electric vehicles cause oil demand to eventually peak, meaning their vast reserves must be sold now or risk losing their entire value before time runs out. Their strategy is to maximize market share immediately. By pumping more and selling faster, they aim to monetize their oil wealth before the world moves on to greener alternatives. For the UAE, securing a massive payout before the fossil fuel era ends has become more important than preserving the old cartel order. This shift is a moment of high-stakes suspense for India. As the world's third-largest oil consumer, India imports 85% of its fuel, and over 60% of those imports come directly from OPEC+ countries. For decades, India has been forced to pay the Asian premium. This map shows the structural unfairness. Middle Eastern producers often charge Asian nations more for the exact same quality of oil they sell to Europe or America. This forced premium drains the Indian economy. When the cartel cuts production to raise prices, India's import bill balloons, the rupee weakens, and the Reserve Bank is forced to grapple with the resulting economic instability. The downstream consequences are felt at every petrol pump in the country. High oil prices fuel domestic inflation, increasing costs for the millions of commuters and farmers who power India's agrarian economy. Under a unified OPEC+, New Delhi operates as a captive price taker, remaining at the mercy of production quotas set thousands of miles away. A fractured, decentralized OPEC+ shifts the balance of power. If individual producers break their quotas and compete for market share, the artificial price floor collapses, creating a buyer's market where India can negotiate better deals. India is already exploiting this fracture. A unique joint venture now fills India's strategic storage caverns in Mangalore with Emirati oil, creating a direct pipeline of supply that bypasses traditional cartel politics. In a historic move to internationalize its currency, India has even begun trading with the UAE in rupees, bypassing the need for American dollars and deepening their bilateral energy alliance. But there is a risk. If OPEC Plus loses its role as a stabilizer, the oil market could become a Wild West. India would be vulnerable to unpredictable price crashes and spikes that make long-term economic planning nearly impossible. While breaking the monopoly offers the chance for cheaper oil, it also destroys the predictable pricing that a developing nation requires to manage its growth safely. For now, a compromise has kept the UAE inside the tent, but the fundamental reasons for the rebellion have not vanished. The ticking clock of the energy transition continues to drive a wedge between the cartel's members. New Delhi has realized that the era of relying on a mysterious club in Vienna to dictate its progress is ending. India is shifting toward a more aggressive, self-interested energy diplomacy to secure its own future. The silent shift in the desert has started. By the time the global energy order settles, the landscape will be unrecognizable. The question remains: how will India navigate a world where loyalty is secondary to a sheer, desperate fight for survival?